Our impact on natural systems is influenced by two factors: how many of us there are and how much each we consume. As the human population has grown, our demands on natural resources have increased. And in the specific case of Australia, in the last 30 years, both our population and our greenhouse gas emissions have increased by about 50% because the number of us multiplies how much on average we consume. So it's not a case of population or consumption, because they multiply to produce our impact on natural systems. We have to address both if we're to achieve our stated goal of living sustainably. The things that make people vulnerable are unavailability of clean water, unavailability of food, unavailability of shelter. These are all exacerbated by increasing numbers. And there's already food stress and water stress in some parts of the world, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. And that level of stress is multiplied by how many people there are. So the urgent task is to give people in poor parts of the world the capacity to limit their numbers by providing family planning. Because all the evidence is that where women have access to family planning and have control of their fertility, they exercise the choice to have fewer children, and that reduces the problem of living within the limits of natural systems. One study in Europe found that having one fewer child is the most significant thing we can do to reduce our impact on the climate, far more than eliminating meat from our diet or getting rid of our car and using public transport or avoiding air travel, because the one extra child we have will in turn have extra children who will in turn have extra children, and there'll be a compounding impact on the climate over the future decades. The basic point is that having fewer children doesn't by itself solve the problem of climate change, but having more children ensures that we won't solve the problem of climate change. Wherever we are, however low we live on the food chain, our impact is multiplied by the number of us there are. Yes, more children in Namibia contributes less to climate change than more children in Australia or in North America, but it still contributes. And the fundamental point is that unless we stabilise the human population, there is no prospect, even in principle, of avoiding dangerous climate change. The only IPCC scenarios in which we keep the increase in average global temperature below 2 degrees are those which assume that the human population peaks in the next couple of decades and then slowly declines. That is an inescapable conclusion. Family programs are our best buy because all the evidence is that women don't want to have large families. They want to have control of their fertility. And if they are given the opportunities, they will exercise that choice and have smaller families. And having smaller families both increases their capacity to live within the limits that climate change is now imposing: less fresh water per person, less food per person, lower agricultural production, and so on. It also increases the chance that as a global community we can slow down climate change. I can't really give a logical explanation for the failure of many decision makers to notice that in the climate models, that the only climate models which avoid dangerous climate change assume the population peaks in the next couple of decades and then declines. The only possible explanation is that the factors which influence population are family planning and migration, and those are both issues that most decision makers prefer to avoid. So I suspect there's a culture of denial about population issues among decision makers in general and elected politicians in particular. And I think it was Paul Ehrlich had said that it's remarkable how easy it is for somebody to not see the bleeding obvious if their career or their income depends on them not seeing it. Well, the whole notion of big Australia assumes that we have limitless resources and we can expand without limit on this continent. I can remember when I was young, there was talk about us having to populate our empty north, or it would be overrun by populous countries to the north of us. And I remember the late Cyril Pearl pointing out in a radio broadcast that our north was relatively empty and the islands like Java were densely populated for thousands of years before Europeans set foot in Australia. And there are good geographical reasons why Java, with its rich, deep volcanic soils, supports a large population, and Arnhem Land supports a comparatively low population. That saying we had to populate our empty north or it would be taken over was a bit like Algeria saying that if they didn't populate the Sahara Desert, Mali would overrun it. It's just a mad argument. Um, while we are a large continent, we are the driest inhabited continent. We are the inhabited continent with the most variable rainfall. And the current Australian population is stretching the limits of what can be sustainably provided within the natural systems of Australia. So a big Australia is effectively of reduced quality of life as we degrade the natural systems of Australia, provide fewer natural resources per person, and sentence our own children and grandchildren to an impoverished future. And that's why both I and organisations like Sustainable Population Australia are arguing, I think, persuasively, that it is the only responsible approach to aim at stabilising our population at a level that can be sustainably supported. To do otherwise is to steal from our own descendants.